Hello, in this set of videos, I'm responding to a question from a student in my class. This is the first of hopefully not too many virtual online help, given the current situation we're in. So this is a video that I'm creating for my class to help them through a specific task. So the question that a student sent me was that they were having trouble having an entry field that responded to a button click that would cycle through and change the behavior of the screen. So what I've done is I've built this example here, which you can find in my GitHub repository under pmiscu.github.io under virtual extra help 1. This is my first virtual extra help example. And what it actually looks like when it all gets running is it will look like this. So let's just reload it so we see the original state. So I can cycle through different countries. Notice it goes back to Brazil. I can go backwards through them, and I can also come up here and I can type in something like Canada and click submit, and then what it does is it pops to that image. If I put in USA and I hit submit, it will pop to that image. Now, if I click in something like Japan, which I haven't accounted for, nothing happens. And that's something you can try and, if you understand this example, hopefully you can modify and play around with. So let's kind of dive into our actual development here. And so I'm just using Sublime Text, and what I have here, let's get rid of that, is I'm going to be working in two files, live build vh1 and live.css and live build vh1.html. And all I have currently right now is a basic HTML template linking the style sheet. So what I'm going to try and do with all these extra help is I'm going to try and make a README file. It's not going to be perfect, but what this example does, the user can type in a country into the search bar and hit search. If the country exists, then the image and the text will update. The user can cycle through the images using the previous next button. What elements does this example include? Well, it includes a dynamic nav bar, which really doesn't do anything. It's just how I kind of got that. That's where I wanted to put the entry. And this is the source that I used to generate it. It displays an image. It has previous and next buttons, and that's the source that I use to generate it. And then what does it highlight? It highlights what's called a document object model approach, or DOM, linking objects on the page to specific functions. It highlights how to set properties of objects based on an understanding of what happens when DOM is used to access an object on the screen. It highlights the essential for loop structure. This is a really big one, especially if you're in my class. We're doing some pretty cool stuff, and I love it when students try and push themselves a little further and try more complicated things. However, when you get down to it, what do I really want you to walk away from this course with? A number of things, but one of them is understanding a for loop. I can't stress how important for loops are. And we use what are called parallel lists to manage this. And then what here is how to link a function to a button. And we're going to see how to do this in the video in a minute. So I'm actually going to leave this, but these are some steps that we're going to follow. Okay, so to wrap up this first video, because I think we're going to do it over a couple, is let's just get the actual template set up. So what I wanted to actually do was I wanted to show you how I built this by using the online W3 schools, because one of the things I find is students go and grab stuff from W3 schools and shove it in, and it all kind of jumbles together and it never works quite right. So I'm going to take these elements, and the first one I'm going to take is this search bar, which is this one right here. So I'm going to hit try it myself, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here, and I'm not just going to cut and paste it all. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of the style, which is all of here, and I'm going to copy that style, and I'm going to come back into here, and I'm going to copy into my CSS and save that. Now I'm going to add a little comment in here, and that comment's just going to be, oh, it's the wrong one for that, sorry. There's a comment. This is the CSS for the nav bar. What happens sometimes is students will take a couple elements and start putting all the CSS in, but they actually conflict. So I've done a little bit of, I've built this already. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to really clearly talk about where the CSS for the nav bar is and where the CSS for the buttons are. And what that does for me is, well, what I would do as a next step is I would go and make sure there's no conflicts with that. In this case, there won't be because I've tried this out. Okay, so now let's take, that's the CSS. So let's go back to here and let's find the actual, so let's try to find the actual body. I'm just going to take, all I want is nav bar there. That's it. I don't want any of this. I just want the nav bar, and that's, you see the div here, top nav. There's the close of the div. So let's copy that. Let's come back into here. And we're going to paste that in our body. And let's save this and let's see how it comes up. I'm just going to pause this for a second, and I'm going to come here to live build HTML, and I click, and I should get the nav bar there. So I don't. And that suggests to me that there's I can see I have the content, but I don't have the style. So that suggests to me the error here is I have an issue with my linking. So I'm gonna take a pause, figure it out, and then we'll come back. So remember how I said the content was there, but not the style? That's because the issue is linking of my CSS file. I put live build, but I forgot to put here VH1 for virtual help 1. So let's save this. Let's come back to our page. And let's refresh. And there we go. We have our bar, we have our search button, and we have a submit. Now the one minor modification I want to make here is that this is set up as a form, the submit, and I don't want it to be. I'm not going to go into what it is, but basically all I want is I want the input button. I want the input field, which is here, and I want the button. I don't want this to be a form object, so I'm actually going to take that out, and I'm going to pull that back in line with everything. You wouldn't actually, to be honest, at this stage you won't notice the issue. However, this will become a problem a little later. What I'm doing is I'm tabbing it all back, because when you cut and paste it, it puts spaces in, and now that works out nicely. So let's just go and double check this to make sure, and I'm just going to refresh, and it still looks the same. Okay, let's add the buttons. So I'm going to come in here. Here are our buttons. So again, I want all the style, so I'm going to take all of this style, I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to come back into here, and I'm going to come into my CSS, and I'm going to go below all of this, I'm going to paste it all in, and I'm going to save it. Now, I'm going to add a comment here, and this is going to say this is for the previous and next buttons. Again, what you have to be really careful of is there could be information in here and information up here that conflict with each other. I've already done this, and so I'm aware there's not a conflict, and so it's perfectly fine. But what you should do is you should go back. If you have something funny happening, it could be because of that conflict. All right, now let's go in and get the HTML, and I'm going to grab all of this. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to come back into my code, and I'm going to paste this right below it. Let's save this, and let's take a look at what this looks like. And there's our button. Let's bring this over just a little bit. Now, I want this to be centered, so I'm going to do this a really quick way. Is I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it inside a center tag. And the other thing is, if you remember from my original example, if you come back, I didn't have these. I just had those arrows, and I just want those rounded buttons for my design. So I'm going to come back in here. Before I do that, we can find this simply enough by right-clicking and saying inspect. And when I inspect this, I can see pretty quickly it's this line here. So it's those two lines that are those two buttons. So I'm going to come back now into my code, and I'll remove those. I'm going to save this. I'm back in here. Let's refresh. Beautiful. Okay, the last thing I want to do is I want to add an image into this. And for now, I'm just going to put the Canadian image. I'm from Canada, why not? So let's come back in here, and the image, if you remember, sits between the top nav in this section. So I'm going to come inside the center tag, and I can actually tab this in. There we go. And now I'm going to do this image tag. So let's take this. I'm going to take a standard image tag. Oops, I don't want that all to go away. And I'm going to paste this in, and it says src canada.jpg, but this isn't quite right because my resources, if I pull up my folder here, you'll see that they're inside a folder called images. This is a really good thing to do to group your resources like this. It gets really messy if I put all my images in here. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to come and say images, and then I'm going to put // because remember, / is an escape code, So if you put a single backslash, it views that as waiting for something special to happen. So the first backslash says, I'm an escape code, whatever the next character is, do something special, and the second backslash is the actual backslash. So let's save that, and let's refresh this. Oh, we have a problem. Let's pause and see if we can find that. Let's first, before I pause it, let's go into my console and see if I can see it. Let's go to the bottom here, console. Okay, so no error. Let me pause for a second. So there wasn't an error. It seemed that maybe I just didn't save it or refresh it properly. So this is where we're going to wrap up this video. So what we have is we have this nice nav bar at the top. We have this section we can type in. We hit submit right now. Nothing happens. If your page loads something and you get an error, that's because you haven't removed those form tags. We don't want those form tags, so make sure you remove those. We have an image, and we have previous and next buttons, and we can cycle through those. I hope this video helped, and please follow along in our next step. And I'm going to be probably posting a lot of videos in here. I love your feedback, and if there's something particular you're looking for, please let me know. This is a great way for me to grow as a teacher as well. Have a wonderful day. Cheers.